Welcome to Podiatry Unfiltered. This is the podcast where we skip the sugarcoating and talk honestly about what it takes to survive and thrive as an independent podiatrist today.
Hi guys, this is Michele McGowan, and this is episode 6 of Podiatry Unfiltered, and this is about ignoring the noise. There's no perfect time. All right, so let's just talk about the noise, because if you're in the podiatrist business owner corner, or you're thinking about becoming one, there's a lot of noise surrounding what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to look like before you start. You're supposed to have everything organized, perfect systems, perfect SOPs, perfect timing, and that just doesn't exist. This weekend really drove that home for me. This weekend, it was the FPMA SAM Conference we have here in Florida. And honestly, I thought my social battery was actually just going to completely be dead by the end of the day. I talked to more people than I ever have at a conference, people who actually watch the podcast or listen to the podcast, colleagues in Florida who aren't using any of the regenerative medicine options that we do have available and have questions. Lots of great conversations with different people, a lot of different voices and opinions sometimes when you go to conferences like that. And there's a lot of feedback telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. But instead, for me, this past conference, it was actually really fun. It gave me a lot of clarity around something I see over and over again in podiatry. The reality is certain conversations are just a lot more meaningful than others. I spent a lot of time talking with younger podiatrists this weekend. Almost some younger podiatrists I probably seemed overbearing. I'm like, this is a simple thing to add. You don't have to know everything you're going to do before you start doing it. But I talked to a lot of younger, smart, motivated, and very clinically solid podiatrists. And almost every conversation circled back to the same struggle. Which higher level service should I add to my practice? What's the right move? What if I choose the wrong thing? And what I realized is this: they're not confused. They're not hesitating. They're waiting for certainty. They're waiting for validation, waiting for the right answer. And I really think that's the trap. Because really in business, especially as a practice owner, there's no perfect answer. There's no perfect timing. There's really just the next decision. And that's kind of a lot of like business coaches and people may tell you, no, you have to have everything in order. Not all of them. I think there's some really great people that have information out there for podiatry. But waiting is really just a losing strategy in any business. Being a podiatry business owner or being a podiatrist and owning your practice, you are a business owner, you are an entrepreneur. And if you read any books by any entrepreneurs, there's no perfect time. I talk a lot about organization. If you were part of the Independent Podiatrist Network on our Facebook group, I talk a lot about SOPs. I talk a lot about systems who are really phenomenal at helping organize that. I do think those things matter. But here's the truth. No one likes to say it, but SOPs are not a prerequisite to starting. They're just the result of starting. You start something, you're like, oh crap, I got to fix this. Every SOP I have today exists because something broke, something annoyed me, or something was just inefficient, or something just didn't still. No one wakes up with a perfectly organized practice. So if anybody's selling that, that's not true. You build organization in motion. And this idea that you need your shit together before you start, that's just noise. That's just fear dressed up as professionalism. I'll tell you what, during this conference, I got together with old friends who we all had different paths. I spent some time catching up with old friends this past weekend. Some work for orthopedic groups, some work in private equity, and some own their own practices. And let me be very clear about something. These are excellent surgeons, highly trained, providing high-level care. This is not a knock on anyone, but here's what hit me. My friends who are employed cannot offer any regenerative services that were discussed this weekend. Not because they don't believe in them, not because they don't understand them, because these are very smart, brilliant people, but because there's no incentive for them to do so. And there's no moral judgment here, but that's just a reality of their situation. And that's when it really clicked again. This is where the independent podiatrists have a superpower, being able to move fast, make a decision, no red tape. Those things are all really important, but that is your superpower if you own your own practice. I will tell you, there are lectures when you go to these conferences you really should pay attention to. I was actually lucky enough, I was able to watch phenomenal lectures this past weekend by people who are actually doing the work. Twee Hoelsworth, Jody Schoenhaus, Joanne Balgren, Roel Desai. They're not just talking about theory. They're implementing these regenerative medicines the way I have in my practice. They're doing it in their real practices. They're doing it with real patients. It's not just smoke and mirrors. If you own your own practice, these services can be your superpower. Because what I learned from my employed friends is this, and again, this is no shame on them. I respect these people so much. But they can't do these things even if they want to, but you can. So here's the part I really want you to hear clearly. If you're a sports medicine focused podiatrist and you own your own practice, stop waiting for validation from surgical lecturers who work for somebody else to talk about things like shockwave, soft wave, DPMX, laser, regenerative options. They're not going to talk about fat pad restoration, even though these things are helping our patients. They're not going to talk about it. Not because it doesn't work, but because they can't. They cannot do that in their practice. If you want to learn about these services, pay attention to those doctors who are actually implementing them. Go to the lectures and learn from people in the trenches. That's how it gets done. I think sometimes for younger practitioners, it's a little hard to ignore the noise because you're so close to what the epicenter of podiatry dogma is. This weekend reminded me of something really important. The podiatry business owner you're trying to become, they don't exist in the future. They're built through action and preparation, and there's no perfect time. There's no perfect system, and there's absolutely no perfect level of organization for you. They're only starting. Look at all the great entrepreneurs. They didn't wait. They didn't have paralysis by analysis. They started, figured stuff out as they went. If you own your own practice, this is your moment. Ignore the noise, stop waiting, build while you're moving, and don't give away your superpower by hesitating because momentum beats perfection every single time. I do believe that all of the regenerative medicine things that we do in our practices, they eventually will be the standard of care. More patients come in and they ask about things. We have patients that drive for 50 miles away just to get the soft wave because no other podiatrist is doing it within that area. Yeah. I'm Michele McGowan, Podiatry Unfiltered, episode 6. Just remember, now's the time. Don't have paralysis by analysis. Get out there and get it done.